Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander viewers are advised that the following program may contain images and voices of people who have died.
Hi, Ngaree Jane, our kid. Happy NAIDOC.
Happy NAIDOC to you, Tom.
Woo! The theme is because of her we can. Have you got a fierce black woman role model in your life?
The one person I really wanted to acknowledge and thank and pay homage to this week is my mum.
Your mum, Gail, is that right?
Yes, and my mum is a proud Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander woman. She's been quite independent and resilient from a very young age. My mum's just always been a wonderful, inspirational lady who was able to just push forward in life and support us kids and my dad, John, in everything that he wanted to achieve.
Well, your dad, Jack, was the first Indigenous minister for the Northern Territory. You are an ambitious politician as well. We have this adorable photo of you when you were 8 years old in 1989, holding a mocked-up front cover of the Northern Territory News, asking whether or not you are going to be the first Aboriginal woman Prime Minister of Australia from the 1st of January 2020. You've got 2 years to do it. Are you going to get there, Ngaree?
I'm still optimistic, but I think I've run out of time, Tom. It's a question that comes up quite frequently. But I'm happy to be a proud member of the government in the Northern Territory and the member for Karama. So I'll settle for that at this stage.
You've got to start stabbing people in the back now.
I just don't have it in me.
Well, you are the Assistant Minister for Youth in the Northern Territory. How would you sum up the situation for Indigenous young people in the Territory right now?
I can't speak for all of the young Indigenous people right throughout the Northern Territory, but what I can say is that we've made the headlines for all the wrong reasons in the recent past, with the mistreatment of a 2-year-old young Aboriginal girl in Tennant Creek and the very, very high incarceration rates of our young Indigenous people. So I wouldn't say that it is a very happy environment at this stage.
We hear these headlines that are kind of mind-blowing. As of June this year, 100% of the kids in youth detention are Indigenous. In response to the Dondale Royal Commission, the NT government allocated $71.4 million to rebuilding Dondale and the Alice Springs Youth Detention Centre, but just $10 million on diversion programs. Isn't that a little bit out of whack?
When I first looked at it, I guess I was a bit surprised as well. Rather than just refurbish what we've currently got, I agree wholeheartedly that the money needed to be set aside to build a new facility, not taking away from being very proactive and providing more supports and more activities and better engagement for our kids so we can support them and their families and their communities to get off to a really good start and avoid the justice system altogether.
There is this huge amount of focus on Tennant Creek at the moment after this horrific story of a 2-year-old child allegedly being raped. We've heard there are about 8,000 Aboriginal kids who have suffered some sort of abuse and neglect in the Northern Territory. How much can the state actually step in and make things better for Indigenous kids?
I do believe that the way forward for any government outcome is to empower and resource and enable our community to be that difference. The government and public servants, we can't do and solve everything, and that's just the harsh reality. But what we can do is support our non-government organisations and our communities going forward to make sure that we've got a nurturing environment where our kids are protected first and foremost.
It kind of seems an impossible situation because either the government isn't doing enough, and we've heard about, in that case of that particular 2-year-old, there were 52 notifications relating to that child or his siblings, like documented over a long period of time. So it just seems like people weren't listening or weren't correctly notified and a horrible thing allegedly happened. Or the government does get involved with something like John Howard's intervention and arguably make things a whole lot worse.
Yeah, and that's two really good, I guess, viewpoints and examples to use there, Tom. So with going forward, what my government has done is taken on board, the key findings out of that 2-year-old situation, the fact that there were more than 50 notifications, and why weren't agencies talking to each other? But more importantly, rather than lay the blame on the services and on government agencies or on the family themselves, what we need to look at is what we can do to improve this going forward. How do we make sure that another child isn't abused, isn't neglected, isn't, growing up in a situation that they shouldn't be? I don't think government or any other area of our community is ever going to be 100% perfect, but we can definitely get better. Now, there is no situation in anywhere in the world, let alone the Northern Territory, where it's okay for a child to be abused. So I think all Territorians and all Australians and everyone around the world is on the same page there, Tom.
You are a member of the Labor government. You said the Howard government's intervention set some communities back about 30 years. Do you think it was a mistake for federal Labor to commit to continuing with the intervention?
I understand why it was done, but I don't appreciate the way that it was done, and I don't think many other people do. So the unintended consequences of that federal legislation really disempowered Aboriginal people and Aboriginal communities. I have heard stories that there have been some communities who were strengthened. I have spoken to Aboriginal women in remote communities in the Katherine region who told me when I worked for the intervention that there were good points from it, that the kids were clothed and they were happy and that the violence had come down. Now, anything that government or anyone else can do to improve our communities is a bonus. But what I found really hard, as somebody who worked in the intervention and as an Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander Territorian and really invested in that space, was the way that it was done. I mean, having your army tanks roll into remote communities in Central Australia, what was missing from that whole intervention, Tom, and the planning around it was engagement with the people. Now, by not including Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people in those discussions going forward, that's where the disempowerment stemmed from.
Well, Ngaree, thank you so much for your time. Happy NAIDOC week and hope to talk to you again.
Happy NAIDOC week, Tom. Thanks for having me, and I just encourage everyone around Australia to get out and be involved with your NAIDOC week celebrations.
There you go. Ngaree,